Alright everyone, this is partially just a my understanding video with regards to some of this legalistic weird royalty bullshit that goes on in UK politics. But I think I've got the general idea of it, which is Boris Johnson, Prime Minister in the UK, basically asked the Queen, if it pleases the Queen, may you prorogue Parliament for a while. She's giving her Queen's speech, and I guess that normally what happens is Parliament's temporarily suspended so the Queen can come out and be full-on monarch and give her speech, and it's very, like, regal, I guess, supposedly, and very legalistic. Like, if something goes wrong, like someone's shoelace is tied backwards, they have to redo it, probably, because that's the way, monarchies tend to work. They break down into bureaucratic nightmares even worse than republics do. But he requested an abnormally long period for this, such that the obvious intent is to keep the MPs from being able to debate Brexit, which means that the likelihood of a hard Brexit soars. It becomes pretty much inevitable. The idea is that because things are so slow and strangulated in a system like the British Parliament, they won't have time to actually try to get a deal in order to preempt Boris Johnson, who's like basically, hey, I've offered the EU what I can, and they don't want to play ball, and fuck it all, we're just gonna have a hard Brexit, and then we'll take care of things. Because he was actually a Brexiteer, unlike Theresa May, who was a Remainer. The best case scenario at this point is that the UK ends up with a hard no-deal Brexit. It's basically, you don't even have to like the best possible thing that could have happened initially was that the person negotiating actually gave a damn, wasn't Theresa May. They'd put like Nigel Farage in charge or so, or Boris Johnson, and they would get a good deal in which the UK and EU could continue amiable relations more or less, and it would simply be a splitting of the UK from the EU. Everything else would, continue churning along more or less as normal. Things could be fiddled around with over time, and it wouldn't be a problem. The next best thing is just a no-deal Brexit. And keep in mind, I keep repeating this every time, if you have a no-deal Brexit, what will happen is your economy will slump immediately. All of that slump will be blamed on Brexit. But if you actually had a behind-the-scenes look at what's happening, you'd find it was the result of multinationalists punishing the UK in order to put stress on the population, because the multinationalists, including those that are British, primarily have their business and money elsewhere. They don't have any national loyalty. They want to punish the UK because what they'll do is 6 months later, something they'll say, well, look at the pain Brexit has caused us. And they'll purposely try to strangle any post-Brexit negotiations as well. Look at the pain. Look at the evil of Brexit. We must rejoin the European Union. Let's beg them for re-entry and stuff like that. It's not clear that I think it's Spain and Italy might balk at that, keep them out. But basically, that's the operative goal of the multinationalists that have all their money in Brussels rather than in London. But that's better than the alternative of having a deal at this point, because once you've given everything up, the deal that Theresa May was talking about amounted to, well, you'll still be subject to EU rules, you just won't have a vote. So you won't be in the EU, but everything else will remain the same and will abuse you even more. As a form of punishment, I suppose, an example to other undisciplined nations that want this sovereignty bullshit, would say the people in Brussels. So anyway, Boris Johnson got it successfully. This Queen signed off on it. More likely, she has like a scribe there to sign things for her, and she's like, his only job is to replicate her signature, and she has him kneel before him and does the sword thing, and then she says, you may sign my signature, my son. And I'm sure it's very, very cute. And, I wonder if the Queen at this point can even wipe her own ass after she goes poo-poo. But, it's really funny, I suppose. So Boris Johnson got that through. There were people hashtagging it like stop the coup and stuff like that, but then it was pointed out, look, this is normal. The only abnormality is the length of time, I guess, that they're going to have Parliament sort of shuttered. They should just fucking do away with Parliament altogether. It's not doing you any good. It doesn't seem like democracy is really doing any good in the EU states at this point anyway, because it's just leading to more strangulation and regulation by the EU. And the dissolution of national sovereignty at all possible levels. It doesn't matter whether it's a left-wing or a right-wing culture. It doesn't matter whether it's run by a bunch of socialists like, what's his name, Van der Bellen or whatever is in like Austria, or the leftist government in Sweden. It doesn't really matter whether it's those style of governments. They want like welfare, open borders, or whether it's like Viktor Orban, Everyone suffers under the EU's various rules. And it's a patchwork anyway. It doesn't make any sense. It's really kind of like a Articles of Confederation version US, only with high taxes and the suicidal sort of compact socially. It's weird. And the UK decided we don't want any part in it. The people voted. Now there are people over there that want a second people's referendum. We must have democracy by voting over and over until we get the result we want. I bet anything that if you held another vote, you'd actually get more support for Brexit than before. Because the campaigners for Brexit, having smelled blood in the water, would campaign 10 times harder, number one. It would look like a usurpation of democracy to any sane person, number two. And a lot of people just wouldn't fucking give a shit, I think. I think a lot of people wouldn't give a shit. They're looking at their lives. They're seeing their life isn't particularly different since articles were triggered in the first place, and they'll just go along with it. But yeah, keep that in mind. I'm not saying the economy of the UK won't go into a tailspin after Brexit. After Brexit happens, probably on Halloween, which is hilarious. It'll be a very spooky time of year for the British and everyone else. It'd be great for me. I'll be sitting there, it's like, it's Halloween and we've got A-grade fucking breaking news right now. It's going to be a good day for me. But, yeah, no offense to the British, but, I analyze current events, so I'd say that about any culture. But, yeah, you'll probably have a hard Brexit, and then the economy will slump. You'll probably have a very bad November. You'll have a bad winter, so to speak. Keep in mind, though, there's light at the end of the tunnel, but you got to crack down on the multinationalists. You got to bring your money back. Do what we're doing here. It's working. Our economy's fine. It's funny because when the Dow slumps by a few hundred points, the Trump economy is kicking in, and then it recovers for a couple days, and Obama economy comes soaring back. I've literally seen people, unironically, like these people are long-term liberals. We know they're not just trolls. Real people with real opinions, like on Twitter and elsewhere, saying, well, Trump is pissing away the Obama economy. It was going along so well, but now Trump's deregulations have kicked in, and somehow this is harming the Dow Jones. Has nothing to do with China. Nothing whatsoever to do with a temporary hiccup that's also crushing the yuan. It's interesting how people know absolutely nothing about what they're talking about so often. At least I'm willing to admit it when things are speculative. I don't know how long the average period it is that they close Parliament up for the Queen's speech. It's probably like a long weekend for you or something. Not, 4 different weeks. It's interesting, though. Or I think 3 weeks, actually. Sorry. But I hope you get your hard Brexit. It'd be major news. The alternative at this point is worse. Look, if they keep kicking the can down the road, eventually I would think half the population would be protesting in the streets. You voted for Brexit. You're not getting it. At what point do people get bored of waiting? Like, how long is it going to actually take? Should have been they triggered articles right away and they say, okay, it's a Brexit, bye. Yeah, here's your fucking fine, your money and stuff. They tried to negotiate. It was never going to work. It was obvious from the first month of it that the negotiations weren't being taken seriously. You might as well cut yourselves loose, deal with the economic loss you will incur. Keep in mind, take solace in the fact that adding to an already unstable world economy, where the world's two main poles of power, the US and China, are already sparring and going into a nosedive at the moment, if the UK, which is also a major economy, gets rocked, and the EU will take a hit as well, it could cause a world recession. That's not good. Bill Maher, I guess, would be happy, although he'd be unhappy about everything but the US recession in such a case. All those poor people in other countries suffering, but our people, they should suffer a little more because Orange Man bad. Maybe Trump will get kicked out. I don't know. At this point, I don't think he would. I think the Democrats would probably take the blame for not falling in step and actually supporting his economic efforts. They're working before. Look at the USMCA. Hey, you haven't finalized that one. Might want to vote on it at some day. That's about all. Peace out.